You are on Crocodile's True Stories channel. Enjoy listening. It's always something small that cracks the surface. A slip, a glance, a half-second too long of silence. That's all it takes. I remember the exact moment it happened, though it felt unremarkable at the time. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of slow, gray day where the sky can't decide between sun or storm. I was sitting on the couch flipping through the channels, not really watching anything. She was beside me, scrolling through her phone, her legs draped over mine like always. We were relaxed. Or at least I thought we were. We had been planning for an upcoming wedding, her cousin's, I think, and she was looking for something to wear. She had a few dresses saved on her phone, and she started showing them to me. Too bright? She asked, flipping through images. Little loud, I said. Too conservative? She continued. Nah, that one's nice, I replied. We went back and forth like that for a few minutes. Normal, comfortable, familiar. Then her screen froze for a moment, some lag or glitch, and in that pause, her photo gallery popped up, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't framed or centered. It wasn't even in focus. But I saw it clearly. It was a mirror selfie. She was wearing a dark dress I'd never seen before, standing in front of a full-length mirror. Her expression was neutral, maybe playful, but that wasn't what caught my eye. It was the background. Behind her, reflected in the mirror, was a hotel room. Tall curtains, a desk cluttered with takeout containers, and a man. A man standing by the window, shirtless. He wasn't posing. He wasn't even facing the mirror. He was looking out, arms crossed. But he was there, and not by accident. Before I could even process what I was looking at, she saw my expression, or maybe she saw where my eyes had landed. She moved quickly, not panicked, just efficient. She closed the gallery, locked her screen, and tilted the phone toward her chest like someone shielding a secret. She smiled. Casual. Too casual. Oh, that's from that girl's trip to Miami. Remember? With Rachel and them. It's old. I think I sent that to her as a joke. That hotel had the weirdest lighting, remember? She even chuckled, shaking her head like it was nothing. I nodded slowly. But something in me had shifted. Her tone was too smooth. Her body too still. Her explanation came out like it had been rehearsed. Like she'd run through this script before, maybe even in the mirror. There was no moment of confusion, no instinct to ask what I'd seen. Just an immediate, polished pivot. And right there, in that small and quiet moment, I knew. See, this wasn't the start of suspicion. This was the end of denial. I didn't say anything. I didn't call her out or demand answers. I let her change the subject. I went back to scrolling the channels, pretending to be interested in a cooking show neither of us cared about. She leaned back into the couch like nothing happened. Like we hadn't both just crossed a threshold we couldn't uncross. But inside, everything had changed. Because if you've ever been lied to by someone you love, really lied to, not the harmless kind, but the kind that tries to rewrite reality, you know what I mean. You feel it in your stomach before your brain catches up. That moment when the air changes. When everything slows down for a second, like the world is trying to give you a chance to see it clearly. And I did. I saw her clearly in that moment, maybe for the first time in a long time. It wasn't the selfie that did it. It wasn't even the guy in the background. It was her face when she realized I'd seen it. Not shocked, not flustered, just contained. Ready. That's the word. She was ready for this moment. Which means she knew it was coming. Which means it wasn't the first lie. I sat there, nodding as she made some joke about Rachel's weird hotel decor. I even smiled, pretending I believed her. Because what else was I supposed to do? Blow up? Accuse her of cheating based on one blurry photo? Demand the name of a man who hadn't even turned around? No, that wasn't my style. But something in me, something vital, went quiet that day. I stopped assuming the best. I stopped giving the benefit of the doubt. I started listening more, watching more. I began noticing things I hadn't seen before, or maybe I had seen them, but I didn't want to admit what they meant. Little things. Her phone never left her side anymore. She started wearing perfume on days she said she was running errands. There were moments when she smiled at me, but her eyes didn't follow. And I kept hearing that voice in the back of my head. She lied to you. She's lying now. Still, I didn't confront her. I played along. I nodded at her stories, kissed her on the cheek when she left the house, texted her love you before bed. Not because I believed it, but because I needed to buy time. I needed to know how deep the rot went. That's the thing people don't always understand about betrayal. It doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds. It reveals itself in layers. The photo was just the first crack. But once you see that first one, you start looking closer. You start pressing on the walls. And that's when you realize how hollow everything really is. I wish I could say I acted then. I wish I could say I stood up and demanded answers. But I didn't. I waited. Because I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for proof. And now I had a reason to find it. It's strange how hindsight works. When everything is fine, you let things slide. You let your mind smooth over the rough edges because trusting someone means choosing not to look too closely. But once that trust cracks, even the smallest memory becomes a clue, a breadcrumb, a whisper you finally decide to hear. After the photo, after the hotel room and the half-naked man in the background, I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask any follow-up questions. I just stored it away, quietly, like a file in the back of my mind. But something inside me started working overtime. Not paranoia. Not exactly. It was something colder, sharper. The next morning, she got up early to go to the gym. She kissed me on the forehead like always, in that routine, distant way that had become her default. As she walked out the door, I noticed something. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I waited until I heard her car back out of the driveway before I went into the bathroom. Sure enough, no ring in the tray by the sink, no sign of it on the counter. Nothing. When I asked her later that night, she blinked like I'd just accused her of something outlandish. I must have forgotten it at the gym, she said. I took it off when I was lifting. You know how it digs into my hand when I grip the bar? I nodded like that made sense. Like it didn't strike me as odd that a ring she wore for 6 years would suddenly feel like a burden. But now I was noticing everything. The Thursday night volunteer meetings that always ran late. The family trips she started ducking out of, saying work was too demanding. The weekends she'd say she needed a mental break and would go spend time with her friend Marissa. Only when I texted Marissa once, just to check in, she told me she thought we were in Napa together. That was the first real knot in my gut. It wasn't like I didn't trust Marissa, but I trusted my wife more. Or I used to. Now, nothing was off limits. I started second-guessing my own memories. Replaying conversations, cross-referencing dates in my head. I was trying to figure out when the lies had started. Because clearly, they hadn't started with the photo. They started before I noticed anything. That's the hardest part. Realizing that by the time you see the crack, the foundation's already been rotting for a while. I thought back to how she used to talk about this guy at her office. Dan. At first, it was just stories, casual mentions over dinner. Dan said the meeting today was a disaster. Or Dan told me I should start charging people for my ideas. Always harmless. Always low stakes. But slowly, the tone changed. She laughed a little longer when she mentioned him. Her face softened when she said his name. And then the mentions stopped altogether. That was the red flag I didn't notice in real time. When someone goes from talking about someone constantly to not at all, that's not nothing. That's a decision. Another memory surfaced a few days after the photo incident. We were at a small gathering at a friend's house. She was in the kitchen laughing with her friends, the tight group of girls she'd known since college. I walked in mid-conversation, and suddenly the laughter died. You know that hush, the kind that sweeps through a room like someone flipped a switch? It hit like that. They all turned to smile at me, a little too quickly, and then one of them, I think it was Lindsay, said, "We were just talking about this podcast, nothing juicy." It sounded like a joke. It played like a joke. But I remember the way they looked at each other. Like they weren't just covering for a story, they were covering for her. That moment plays in my head now on repeat. Back then, I brushed it off. I didn't want to be the guy who reads into things, who questions every laugh that stops when he walks into the room. But now it felt like I was seeing the story from the other side of the glass. I also started noticing her moods. How quickly they turned. She used to get annoyed when I left my socks near the bed or forgot to restock the coffee. That was normal. But lately, she snapped over nothing. The way I said good night too quickly. The way I didn't answer her texts fast enough. One night, I made her favorite pasta. I even lit candles. She walked in, saw the setup, and said, "What's the occasion?" I said, "No occasion. Just thought you'd like it." She stared at the table, then at me, and something flashed across her face. Guilt, maybe? Then it vanished. She forced a smile and said, "Thanks." But her tone was flat, distant, like I was a stranger trying too hard. And that's when it really hit me. She didn't feel guilty for lying. She felt guilty because I was still trying. There was something soul-crushing in that realization. that I was putting effort into something she had already walked out of, emotionally, maybe even physically, that the person I was trying to hold on to wasn't standing next to me anymore. She was somewhere else, with someone else. I started keeping a journal. Just dates, observations, behaviors. Not for revenge. Not even for proof, really. Just because I needed a place to put the chaos that was unraveling in my head. Monday, ring missing again. She said she left it in her purse this time. Wednesday, left for girls' night. Came home late. No details about who was there. Saturday, phone vibrated during dinner. She glanced and flipped it over without replying. I wasn't looking for smoking G***S. Just patterns. And slowly, a pattern emerged. A pattern of inconsistency. Of distance. Of a woman who had checked out of the marriage long before I had a clue. People talk about infidelity like it's this big, dramatic event, like a scene from a movie. But in real life, it's slower. Quieter. It's found in the silence between texts, in the absence of effort, in the way someone forgets how to look at you when they say they love you. It's death by 1,000 omissions. And once you see it, once the blinders come off, there's no going back. You start hearing things differently. I'm just tired sounds like I don't want to explain where I've been. It's just a coworker sounds like it's someone I've already made space for in my life. You're overthinking it sounds like you're dangerously close to the truth. I didn't accuse. I didn't explode. I didn't confront. I observed. I remembered. Because if she was going to lie to me, I wanted to know how long she'd been lying. If I was going to lose my marriage, I wasn't going to lose my dignity with it. So I let her talk. I let her keep making her excuses. I smiled at her stories. I acted like I believed her. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't her husband anymore. Not really. I was the quiet witness at the edge of a collapsing house. Taking notes. Watching the walls bow inward. And I was waiting for the right moment to get out before the whole thing came down. By the time the third Friday rolled around, I knew exactly what I was going to do. She said she had a work offsite that evening. Just a team-building thing, she told me, tossing the words over her shoulder like they meant nothing. We'll probably wrap late. Don't wait up. She kissed me on the cheek and grabbed her tote bag, the one she only uses for overnight trips. She didn't know I'd noticed that. I told her, have fun, and even smiled. My voice was steady. My hands didn't shake. That's the part I'm proud of, the calm. Because inside, I was anything but calm. I waited until her taillights disappeared down the street before I opened the drawer in the hallway and pulled out my phone. I opened the tracking app I'd installed on her car 2 weeks ago. It had taken me a few nights of sitting alone, staring at the ceiling, to even consider doing it. I'd wrestled with the idea. I hated it, the invasion, the secrecy, the fact that I had to play detective in my own marriage. But I hated something else more, the way she made me feel insane every time I brought up my concerns. So I stopped asking and started preparing. The tracker came alive within seconds. The blinking dot moved steadily through the city and eventually settled in a neighborhood I knew well, not because I'd been there, but because she had. She'd once mentioned a coworker named Ryan who lived somewhere over in that area. Ryan, the guy who, according to her, was a total bore but great at spreadsheets. The tracker pinged again. She'd stopped. Outside a house. I stared at the screen for a long minute, then grabbed my keys and left. I didn't rush. I didn't floor the gas or make wild turns. I just drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other clutching the cold, steady hum of my phone. The address came into view. It was a plain suburban house with trimmed hedges, one of those places that looked deliberately forgettable. I parked half a block away, turned off the engine, and K***led the lights. Then I waited. About 10 minutes later, I saw her car. I recognized the outline before I even registered the license plate. She pulled into the driveway like she belonged there. No hesitation. No pause. My stomach twisted. She stepped out of the car wearing that same navy coat she used to wear on our date nights, the one with the silver buttons. She looked good. Too good for an office retreat. Then came the final confirmation. The front door opened, and a man came out. Tall, stocky, probably early 40s. I'd seen him before. He worked in her department. I'd shaken his hand at a company mixer last year. He smiled when he saw her. She smiled back. It was real. Not polite. Not professional. Real. Then she walked toward him. He opened his arms. She leaned in. They hugged. It wasn't a long hug, but it wasn't short, either. His hand stayed on her back just a little too long. She didn't pull away. And that's when I pulled out my camera. I wasn't filming to humiliate her. I wasn't filming to post it anywhere or make some viral moment out of my private pain. I was filming because I needed truth. Unfiltered, time-stamped truth. They went inside together. The porch light turned off. Then the living room lights turned on. I stayed parked. I sat in that car for nearly an hour, watching from a distance. Occasionally, I raised the camera to get a new angle, a new clip. I took notes on my phone. The time she arrived, the way he touched her, the lack of hesitation. There was no part of her that looked uncertain. No guilt in her eyes. No checking over her shoulder. That hurt more than anything. It meant this wasn't new. It meant this wasn't a mistake. This was a routine. After an hour, I drove home. Still no confrontation. Still no angry texts or calls. Still no breakdown. I went home and poured myself a glass of water. Sat at the dining table in the dark, listening to the refrigerator hum. And that's when I realized something strange. I wasn't surprised. Not even a little. This wasn't the moment my world shattered. That had already happened weeks ago, in slow motion. That night with the photo, that was the day the demolition crew showed up. This was just the final brick coming loose. But now I had what I needed. Not just suspicion, not just patterns or missing rings or odd silences. I had evidence. Concrete. Undeniable. The kind of thing that makes lawyers nod and judges lean in. So I saved the footage. Backed it up to 3 separate drives. One in my home office, one in cloud storage under a name she wouldn't recognize, and one hidden inside a folder labeled taxes. I opened a spreadsheet and started logging it all. The photos, the times, the dates. I **Ted her calendar entries and texted myself photos of her gym bag, empty of actual gym clothes. I wasn't unraveling anymore. I was building something. A record. A plan. A foundation for whatever came next. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. There was power in the quiet. That weekend, I made her pancakes. The way she likes them. Crispy edges, blueberries, just a hint of cinnamon. I poured her coffee and kissed her on the forehead. She smiled and said, "You're sweet today." I smiled back. Just in a good mood. She had no idea. Not about the tracker. Not about the camera. Not about the file I was building day by day. I watched her bite into the pancake, and I felt nothing. Not hate. Not pain. Not even disappointment. Just distance. Like I was watching a stranger in my house. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was a subject. A case. A name in a folder. And that folder was almost full. There's a moment, a subtle one, when pain stops being pain and turns into purpose. That moment came for me 3 days after I watched her walk into his house. I was at the grocery store, of all places. Frozen food aisle. One hand on a bag of mixed vegetables, the other still tingling from the cold. I caught a glimpse of myself in the freezer glass, hunched over, eyes sunken, wearing the same hoodie from 2 days ago. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry or humiliated. I felt bored. Bored of feeling like this. Bored of being the sad guy in the background of his own life. That's when I made the decision. No more spiraling. No more pacing the house, obsessing over timestamps and GPS pings. No more replaying her lies in my head like reruns of a show I used to love. It was time to move from emotion to structure. I started the way I always do when something matters, with a list. Step 1, legal counsel. I didn't know any divorce attorneys, but I knew someone who would. A college buddy of mine, Alex, had gone through something ugly a few years back. We weren't close anymore, but I figured he owed me a favor after I helped him move out of his ex's condo in the middle of a snowstorm. He answered on the second ring. "Mark," he said, surprised. "Everything good?" "Not really," I said, "but I think you can help." He didn't ask questions, just texted me a name and a phone number. I made the call that afternoon. By evening, I was sitting in a warm, wood-paneled office across from a woman named Harper, mid-40s, direct, and dressed like someone who'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Tell me everything," she said, sliding a yellow legal pad in front of her. I did, not in a messy way. No breakdowns, just facts. Dates. **TS. Her words when she left for the off-site. What I saw. What I recorded. Harper nodded as I spoke, occasionally scribbling something. When I finished, she looked up and said, "You're already ahead of most people who walk through that door." That was the first time I felt any sense of control in weeks. She gave me instructions. Not just legal ones, but tactical ones. "Keep her accounts active for now," she said. "Don't restrict anything yet. Let her believe everything's normal. I nodded. That was already the plan. Don't confront her. Don't make noise. You're not here to punish her. You're here to protect yourself. Exactly. Step 2. Assets. Harper gave me the name of a financial advisor she trusted. Discreet, efficient. The next day, I met with him in a coffee shop across town. We went over everything. The house, the joint savings, the stocks, the car lease that was technically under my name, but she drove. Move everything you can, he said quietly. Legally, of course, but get it out of reach. Now. I followed his instructions to the letter. I opened a trust, not shady or offshore or anything dramatic, just airtight. The kind of structure where she had no control, no access, and no way to undo anything once the paperwork was signed. I transferred all my personal assets into it. My pre-marriage savings, the shares from my company, even the house, titled solely in my name, thanks to an inheritance from my grandfather that had been used for the down payment. I updated the deed, moved the utilities into my name. Then I opened new bank accounts and started routing my paychecks there. The joint account? I left it untouched. I even deposited a few $100 into it to make it look active. I wanted her comfortable, unaware. Meanwhile, I logged every charge she made. Uber receipts, hotel transactions. A $64 dinner she claimed was team bonding. All of it got its own folder. Step 3. Documentation. Every text she sent me from her volunteer nights, **T. Every Instagram story she was tagged in by mistake, saved. Her calendar entries, her gas station receipts, her gym location pings, all cataloged, all time-stamped. I created backups, encrypted storage, a private email account where I uploaded everything, just in case. Some nights, I sat at my desk long after she'd gone to bed, compiling evidence with surgical precision. She never suspected. I still cooked dinner, still left notes in her lunch bag. I still picked up dry cleaning, folded laundry, smiled when she walked in the door. It was cruel, in a way, but necessary, because what I was building wasn't revenge. It was a parachute. If I was going to jump out of the life we built, I wasn't going to do it blind. Step 4. Emotional containment. This was the hardest one. I stopped asking where she was. I stopped checking her phone when she left it on the counter, not because I didn't care, but because I already knew what I'd find. I stopped expecting her to come home smiling. I stopped hoping she'd bring me a coffee just because. I detached. At first, it felt like pretending. But over time, it became real. I watched her move around the house like a character in a play I'd already seen 100 times. I noticed how she started dressing nicer, even when she said she was just running errands. How she always seemed vaguely irritated when she was around me, but would light up the second her phone buzzed. I stopped reacting. I just made mental notes. Quietly. The more I pulled away, the more she tried to pull me back, but not out of love. Out of suspicion. She started noticing little things. "You left your phone on the table unlocked," she said one night. "That's new." I didn't think it mattered, I replied. She frowned. "Are you mad at me?" I looked at her and smiled. "Not at all." That's when I saw it. The flicker of uncertainty. She was no longer sure of her power. Step 5. Prepare the exit. I made a second set of keys for the house. Not for her, for me. A set I could keep hidden in case I needed to leave quickly or come back while she was out. I started researching moving companies, housing options. I kept it quiet. Cash deposits, burner emails. Nothing in our shared logins. Then I set a date. Not for the divorce. Not for the confrontation. Just a date in my head. A deadline. The day I'd stop collecting. The day I'd act. It wasn't about punishment. It was about timing. And until then, I stayed the course. I played my role. I told her I loved her. And maybe, in some twisted, nostalgic way, part of me still did. Or maybe I just loved who she used to be. Who we used to be. But that wasn't coming back. So I stayed quiet. I cooked dinner. I answered questions. I smiled in front of friends. All while the structure behind the scenes was tightening. Not for her. For me. Because if she was going to burn down the life we built, I was going to make damn sure I wasn't standing inside when it collapsed. The thing about building a life is that it happens slowly. Over years, in pieces, quietly. You collect routines. Shared holidays. Jokes only the two of you understand. All of it stacks up into something solid. Something that feels permanent. And then, one day it's not. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. There was no shouting, no dramatic reveal, no midnight suitcase at the door. Instead, it dissolved quietly, silently, one moment at a time. A look, a missed touch, a forgotten thank you. And once I accepted that, I started changing. Not dramatically, not in ways anyone would notice at first, but I felt it. It started with how I carried myself. I stood taller. I stopped slouching when I walked into a room. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I no longer needed to shrink. At home, I spoke less. I listened more. I didn't argue. Didn't press her when she came home late. I didn't even ask who she was texting when her phone buzzed at midnight. I already knew. But more than anything, I stopped needing her approval. That was the shift. That was the earthquake beneath the still surface. It rattled her. I saw it in the small things. She noticed when I changed my cologne. The one she used to say was too sharp. Now she lingered when she hugged me. She noticed when I started shaving more consistently, when I ironed my shirts even on weekends. "You look good lately," she said once, watching me button a clean, crisp shirt for no reason at all. "Thanks," I replied, checking my watch. "Just trying to feel better." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tilted her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I gave her nothing else. That was the new rule. No more explanations. No more open doors. I was no longer the predictable, forgiving husband. I was becoming something else. And she felt it. I could tell by how she watched me. At first, she thought it was confidence, maybe a fluke. But it continued. I stopped rushing home from errands. I started taking walks by myself. Sometimes I left my phone face up, unlocked, right in front of her. That was calculated. I wanted her to see it sitting there. Because her guilt was never enough to stop her, but uncertainty? That she couldn't stand. She started asking small questions again. "Where were you today?" "Out." "With who?" "Just a walk." That's how you shift power. Not by force, but by letting silence answer the questions. She started dressing louder. Flashier. Bright colors. High heels for casual dinners. There was something desperate in it, like she was trying to remind the world she was still desirable. But I didn't comment. I didn't compliment. I didn't judge. I just watched. She started taking longer in the mirror. I saw her scrolling through selfies, pausing longer on the ones where she looked less like a wife and more like someone available. She was trying to reclaim something, but the space I had created around myself didn't bend. It stayed quiet, unaffected, and that vacuum, she felt it. That's the thing about control. When you hold it too long, you forget what it's like to lose it. She started noticing my phone buzz too. She didn't say anything outright, but I saw the glance. The way she looked up from her book when it lit up across the room. The way she hesitated when she walked past me on the couch, glancing at the screen a little too long. Sometimes I left it open on purpose. Just the home screen. Just enough to make her wonder. No passwords changed. No suspicious hiding. Just a calm she didn't trust. The roles were reversing, slowly. She no longer walked into a room expecting attention. She studied me now, cautiously. Her jokes didn't land like they used to. The eye rolls, the mockery, they fell flat. One morning, I got up early and went for a jog. When I came back, she was already dressed for work, sipping her coffee at the kitchen table. She looked surprised to see me sweaty and smiling. "You're up early," she said. I shrugged. Felt like moving. She nodded slowly. "You never liked running before." Maybe I just didn't like being still. She stared at me for a long time after that. Like she didn't know me anymore. Good. That was the point. I started making plans she wasn't part of. Drinks with old friends, a weekend camping trip with my brother, quiet afternoons at the bookstore where I didn't text her updates. She noticed. She didn't say it, but I saw it. In the furrowed brows, in the way she lingered in doorways, waiting for me to invite her in. But I didn't. This wasn't punishment. This was withdrawal. Quiet, intentional space. And in that space, she started to unravel. She double-checked her calendar invites. Asked me where I'd been more than once. Started mentioning names from work again. Coworkers I knew were part of the mess, but now framed as just friends. I nodded politely. I didn't challenge her lies anymore. That would have required caring. I no longer cared. I was focused on the exit, on building something new beyond the collapse. I still hadn't confronted her. I still hadn't filed the papers. But I wasn't waiting for more proof. I was just waiting for the right day. She brought home wine one Friday. Tried to start a conversation. Made dinner. Laughed too loudly at her own stories. It was all performative, like she was trying to rewrite the script in real time. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I took a sip of wine. "Just tired." "You've seemed tired a lot lately." I looked at her across the table. She was trying to read me, trying to find her footing in the stillness I'd created. You ever think, I said slowly, that sometimes people don't get tired, they just get done pretending? She blinked. That hit. She didn't respond, just picked at her food. I left the table early. The next morning, I went through my routine without a word. I ironed my shirt, made my coffee, checked my planner. I heard her footsteps behind me as I reached the door. Mark, she said. I turned. She looked unsure. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Nothing, she said finally. I nodded. Have a good day. She didn't respond. That was the new silence between us. It didn't feel cold. It felt like air returning to a room that had been suffocating for too long. And me? I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't grieving. I wasn't begging the universe for answers. I was preparing. And every quiet moment I gave her was proof that I had taken my power back. She didn't know what was coming. But I did. We were at a dinner party. Mutual friends. The kind of gathering where everyone once saw me as just her husband, the quiet guy in the background. This time, I didn't come alone. I brought Harper, my lawyer, sharp, graceful, and unbothered. Conversations circled around me now. People leaned in. She watched from across the room, trying to laugh at jokes, interject, reclaim space. But it was gone. The orbit had shifted. I wasn't in hers anymore. She was in mine, and no one pulled her back in. It was a Sunday evening. I was walking home from the bookstore when I saw her across the street, alone, hunched in a coat I'd never seen. She stopped when she saw me. There were no tears, no drama, just silence. I nodded. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The hollowness in her eyes said it all. She had gambled everything and lost. I didn't ruin her. She did that all by herself. I just walked away, finally free, finally weightless.